Good evening, and welcome back to SleepWise. Tonight, we follow one of the strangest true stories of our age. The story of a person who built something that quietly reshaped how the world thinks about money and then disappeared, leaving behind only a name. That name was Satoshi Nakamoto. It appeared on a short document posted to a small mailing list of cryptographers in the autumn of 2008. The paper described a new kind of money, one that needed no bank, no government, and no central keeper of accounts. It is worth pausing on when this paper appeared. The autumn of 2008 was a season of failing banks and frightened markets, a moment when trust in money itself had begun to thin. The idea was called Bitcoin. The person who signed that paper would go on to release it into the world, tend to it for a little while, and then step away so completely that all these years later, no one knows who they truly were. It is a mystery unlike most others. We are not missing a body or a motive or a final letter. We have a great deal of what this person wrote, their careful explanations, their patient answers to strangers, their small corrections and quiet jokes. What we do not have is a face. We do not have a country or a birthday or even the certainty that Satoshi Nakamoto was a single person at all. The name may belong to one mind or to several working together behind a single borrowed signature. Stranger still is what was left behind. In the earliest days of this new money, Satoshi gathered a vast store of it, something close to 1,000,000 coins. Those coins have never moved. Today, they would be worth more than the fortunes of the wealthiest people alive. And yet they sit untouched, year after year, like a lamp left burning in an empty room. A treasure no one has spent, guarded by no one at all. Tonight, we will not try to solve the mystery. Many clever people have tried, and with each attempt, the puzzle has only seemed to deepen. Instead, we will move slowly through the story itself. We will trace the world that made such an invention necessary, the strange and elegant machine that answered it, and the long, deliberate vanishing of the one who built it. There is no need to keep track of every name or every date. Only let the shape of the thing unfold. If these quiet journeys help you rest, you are always welcome to follow SleepWise and to share it with someone who might like to fall asleep while learning something new. We will hold this story gently, not as the tale of a hero nor of a villain, but of a careful builder who made something, gave it away, and then let go of it entirely. Because before we can understand the disappearance, we first have to understand the world that Satoshi stepped into, a world in which money had always, without a single exception, required someone to be in charge. To see the problem clearly, it helps to ask a simple question. What really is money? Beneath the coins and notes and numbers on a screen, money is mostly a record. It is a shared agreement about who has what and who owes whom. In a sense, it is a ledger, a great running list of balances that a whole society quietly trusts. For most of history, someone has kept that ledger. A king stamped the coins, a bank wrote the balances in its books, and a clearinghouse, somewhere out of sight, made sure the numbers added up. This is what people mean by a trusted third party. When you hand over a card or send a payment, you are really asking some institution to update its records on your behalf. You trust that it will subtract from one account and add to another, honestly, and only once. For physical money, that honesty is built in by nature. If you give someone a coin, the coin is simply gone from your hand. You cannot spend it again because you no longer hold it. But digital things do not behave that way. A digital coin would be, at heart, a piece of information, and information can be copied. A file can be sent to a friend while a perfect duplicate stays behind unchanged. This is the heart of the difficulty, and it has a name. Those who studied it called it the double spending problem. How do you stop a person from spending the same digital coin twice, sending the very same money to two different people at once? Picture sending a photograph to two friends at the very same moment. Each receives a perfect copy, and you still keep your own, with nothing lost at all. That is a small wonder for a photograph. It would be quiet ruin for a coin. For a long time, there seemed to be only one answer. You needed a central authority, a single keeper of the master ledger, checking every payment and refusing the second attempt. A referee who could see everything and say no. There was a hidden cost in that arrangement, though it was easy to overlook. The referee had to be trusted completely. It could make mistakes, or play favorites, or be leaned upon by the powerful, and those who used it had little choice but to hope that it would not. And so, digital money, for all its promise, kept circling back to the same place. To work, it seemed to need a bank at its center, the very thing some people most wished to do without. That was the puzzle waiting in the dark, a form of money that lived only as information, yet could not be copied or spent twice, and that needed no one at all in charge to keep it honest. It sounded almost like a contradiction, and for years the brightest minds who tried to build it would run aground on that same hidden rock. Yet they kept trying. Quietly, patiently, a small community of thinkers had set themselves against the problem long before the name Satoshi Nakamoto ever appeared. That small community had a name, half playful and half serious. They called themselves Cypherpunks. They were cryptographers, programmers, and privacy enthusiasts, scattered across the world but gathered in the early 1990s on a shared mailing list. There they traded ideas, code, and arguments late into the night, bound together by a single conviction. Their belief was this: the mathematics of secret keeping, the art known as cryptography, was not merely a tool for spies and generals. It could become a quiet kind of power, placed into the hands of ordinary people. For most of history, cryptography had belonged to states. Governments used it to hide their own messages and to read the messages of others. But by the late 20th century, the same techniques could run on a home computer available to anyone willing to learn. The Cypherpunks saw something profound in that shift. If individuals could keep perfect secrets, sign documents that could not be forged, and send messages no one could read, then the old balance between the citizen and the institution might gently begin to change. They were not only dreaming either. They built tools to scramble email, to hide the path a message traveled, to prove who you were without revealing anything more. Privacy to them was not secrecy for its own sake, but simply room to breathe. One of their guiding ideas was simple and stubborn. Talk and good intentions were not enough. What mattered in the end was working software. In their view, you did not politely petition the powerful for privacy. You wrote the code that made privacy real. Among their oldest dreams was a particular one, returned to again and again. Money. Private, digital money that a person could send to another directly, without a bank watching, without any government able to freeze it or trace it. It was, to them, almost a matter of freedom. A currency beyond the reach of any single ruler felt like a missing piece of the world they hoped to build. But the dream kept colliding with that stubborn rock, the double-spending problem. Still, they did not give up. Year after year, members of this community proposed designs, sketched systems, and published ideas with strange and lovely names. Most went nowhere. A few came tantalizingly close. These were not famous people, for the most part. They were tinkerers and theorists, writing for one another in the glow of late-night screens. And yet, without quite knowing it, they were preparing the ground. The tools Satoshi Nakamoto would later use were not invented all at once. They were gathered piece by piece from the work of those who had tried before. To understand Bitcoin, then, we must first meet a few of those quiet pioneers. For each of them solved a part of the puzzle. None on their own ever solved the whole. The first of them was an American cryptographer named David Chaum. In the 1980s, long before most people had ever heard of the Internet, he imagined a form of electronic cash. His insight was a beautiful piece of mathematics, sometimes called the blind signature. It allowed a bank to confirm that a digital coin was genuine without ever learning who was spending it. Privacy and trust, somehow held together at the same time. Chaum founded a company to bring this idea to life and called its money a cash. For a brief moment, it seemed the future had quietly arrived, but the system still leaned on a central company to issue and verify every coin. When that company faltered and finally closed its doors near the end of the 1990s, the dream did not vanish, but it was wounded. Digital cash, it seemed, still could not stand without something holding it up at the center. Chaum is sometimes called a father of digital cash, and the title is deserved. He had shown that private electronic money was possible at all. What he had not managed to remove was the need for a trusted hand to keep the books. Next came a cryptographer named Adam Back. In the late 1990s, he devised a clever scheme he called hash cash, meant at first to fight the rising flood of unwanted email. The idea was to make a sender's computer perform a small, deliberate piece of work, a puzzle that took a little time and effort to solve. For one honest message, the cost was trivial. For a spammer sending millions, it became a wall. This notion, that effort itself could be proven and counted, would later sit at the very heart of Bitcoin. Around the same time, a thinker named Wei Dai sketched a proposal he called B-Money. He imagined a community of computers keeping track of who owned what, with no bank standing above them, enforcing the rules together as equals. And another mind, the computer scientist Nick Szabo, described a kindred idea he named bit gold. Szabo sought a way to create digital scarcity, a thing that could be costly to make, yet easy to verify, like a small nugget of precious metal that happened to exist only as information. Each of these was a piece of the eventual answer. Blind signatures hinted at privacy. Proof of work hinted at security. And B-Money and BitGold hinted at a system with no one at all in charge. But no one had yet fit the pieces together into a single working whole. Each design solved part of the riddle and stumbled on the rest, especially that stubborn matter of stopping a coin from being spent twice, with no referee to forbid it. The ground was prepared. The tools lay scattered about, waiting. All that was missing was someone to gather them and to add the one idea that would bind them into something alive. That someone was about to arrive, unannounced, under a name no one had ever heard before. The arrival was as quiet as everything else about this story. In the autumn of 2008, an email reached a mailing list devoted to cryptography, the same kind of gathering place the Cypherpunks had long favored. It was signed by someone calling themselves Satoshi Nakamoto, a name that meant nothing at all to those who read it. Attached was a short paper, only about 9 pages long, with a plain and quietly confident title. The title was Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. There were no grand promises in it, no talk of revolution, just a calm, precise description of a system for sending money directly from one person to another. What it proposed was the very thing that had eluded everyone before. A way to send electronic payments straight from sender to receiver without passing through a bank or through any trusted institution standing in the middle. The paper claimed to solve the double-spending problem, the rock on which so many earlier dreams had broken. And it claimed to do so with no central authority, using only careful arrangements of cryptography and a network of ordinary computers. The tone of the writing was striking in its own way. It was modest, exact, and unhurried, the voice of someone who had clearly thought long and deeply, yet felt no need to boast. Where it leaned on the work of others, it said so plainly, Indeed, the paper pointed back to the very pioneers we have just met. It cited the proof of work of Adam Back and the bee money of Wei Dai, gently weaving older threads into a single new design. It read less like a manifesto than like an instruction written by someone who simply wanted the thing to work. There was almost no hint of the author within it, no biography, no flourish, no claim of genius, only the design itself, set down step by careful step. The response at first was muted. A handful of cryptographers on the list read it and replied. Some were doubtful, raising sensible and pointed objections. A few were curious, sensing that something unusual might be quietly taking shape. No newspaper noticed, no market stirred. The wider world carried on, entirely unaware that a small and patient proposal had just been set loose among a few dozen specialists. But Satoshi did not stop at theory. A paper, after all, is only a description, a sketch of a thing that does not yet exist. The real test would come when the idea was built and switched on and left to run out in the open. And so, as the year turned, the quiet author moved from words to working machinery. Somewhere, on some unknown computer, the first piece of this strange new money was about to be brought into being. What came next would carry a small, hidden message, a few words buried in the foundation, left like a note tucked carefully inside a cornerstone. The first piece was laid down on a cold day, early in the new year. After the turning of the year into 2009, Satoshi started the software running and created the very first block of the chain. This first block came to be known as the Genesis block. It was the foundation stone, the one upon which everything else would be built, and it would remain at the bottom of the whole structure forever. Inside it, Satoshi left a small message, tucked into the data where it would be preserved for as long as the system endured. It named that morning's newspaper, The Times of London, and carried the words of its front page. The headline read, "Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." It was a line about governments preparing once again to rescue failing banks with great sums of public money. To understand the weight of that line, recall the season. Across the world, enormous institutions were stumbling, and ordinary people watched their savings tremble. Faith in the keepers of money was, for many, at its lowest in living memory. The choice was almost certainly deliberate. It served first as a kind of time stamp, a proof that this block could not have been made before that day's paper existed. But it also read like a quiet comment on the world. For here was a new kind of money being born, in the very season when the old financial order was being propped up by emergency rescues. The message did not shout. It simply pointed once at the thing this invention had been made to stand apart from. With that first block, the system was alive. New coins existed for the first time, brought into being by the machine itself, belonging at first to no one but the network's lone author. In those earliest hours, Satoshi was very nearly the whole of Bitcoin, a single computer running quietly somewhere unknown, keeping the only copy of a ledger that no one else had yet thought to keep. For days, perhaps longer, it stayed that way. The network was less a network than a single quiet light, burning alone in the dark, waiting for a second light to join it. It was a strange kind of birth. No ceremony, no announcement, no crowd. Just a program started in solitude, writing the opening line of a record that would, in time, stretch across the entire world. But a ledger kept by one person is only a curiosity. The real idea was far stranger and far more ambitious than that. It asked a question that had no easy answer. How could a record of money be kept honestly by everyone at once and owned by no one in particular? How could thousands of strangers who had never met and need not trust each other all come to agree on a single truth? To see how Bitcoin answered that, we must look at the gentle machinery beneath it. A shared book, written by no single hand. The answer began with a simple reversal of the old arrangement. Instead of one ledger held by one trusted institution, imagine a ledger that everyone keeps a copy of all at once. Picture a great public book of accounts. Every payment ever made is written into it in plain view, so that anyone may read the whole history if they wish. Nothing is hidden away, and nothing is held by a single keeper. Now imagine that this book is not stored in one place, but copied onto thousands of computers around the world. Each keeps its own identical version. There is no master copy and no central office where the one true record is thought to live. The pages of this book are what give the system its name. Transactions are gathered together into blocks, and each block is like a single page, sealed and dated. As new pages are added, they are linked one to the next, forming a long chain of blocks. That linking is the quiet genius of it. Each new page carries a kind of fingerprint of the page before it, so that the pages are bound together in order, each one depending on all that came before. This means the history cannot be quietly rewritten. To change a single old payment, you would have to alter that page, which would change its fingerprint, which would break the link to the next page and the next, all the way to the present. So the deeper a record sits within the chain, the more firmly it is held. Old pages settle like sediment beneath the weight of everything stacked above them. The past grows harder to disturb with each passing block. There is a kind of patience built into this. Trust does not arrive all at once. It accrues slowly, gathering strength as block follows block, until what is old becomes, for all practical purposes, permanent. And because every computer keeps its own copy, no single one of them can lie. If one machine tried to claim a false history, the thousands of others would simply disagree, and the network would hold to the version that the honest majority shared. This is what is meant by consensus. Not a ruler declaring what is true, but a great many participants agreeing again and again upon the same record. Authority is quietly replaced by a chord. It is worth pausing on how unusual that is. We are so used to someone being in charge, some office or official we might name. Here, instead, the rules themselves hold authority, and the rules belong to no one. It is a beautiful inversion. The trust once placed in a single institution is spread thin across a whole network until no one carries it alone, and no one is able to betray it from the center. Yet a question remains, and it is the hardest one of all. If everyone keeps the book, then who gets to write the next page? And what stops a dishonest hand from filling that page with lies? The answer to that lies in a kind of contest, one settled not by trust, but by sheer effort. The contest is open to anyone, anywhere, who wishes to take part. Computers across the network compete for the right to write the next page of the ledger and to seal it onto the chain. But the right is not given freely. To earn it, a computer must solve a particular kind of puzzle, one that is hard to crack, yet easy for everyone else to check once it has been done. The puzzle has no clever shortcut. The only way through it is to guess again and again an enormous number of times until at last a guess happens to fit. It is rather like hunting for the one key that opens a lock by trying countless keys in the dark. This is the proof of work we met earlier, the very idea Adam Back had sketched years before. The labor is entirely real. It consumes time and electricity and the steady, patient effort of the machine. Some have looked at all that spent electricity and seen only waste. Others see the very thing that makes the system trustworthy, a wall of real cost that no clever trick can climb around. The story tonight leaves that judgment to the listener. That cost is not a flaw in the design. It is the whole point of it. By making each page expensive to produce, the system makes dishonesty expensive too, far more expensive than simply playing along. The computer that solves the puzzle first announces its new page to the network. The others check the answer, find it good, and add the page to their own copies. The work that built it stands as proof that real effort was spent. For this service, the winner receives a reward, a fresh portion of newly made coins. This is the act people came to call mining, though nothing is dug from the ground. What is mined is simply the right to extend the record and the coins that come along with it. And here is the safeguard that protects the entire history. To rewrite an old page, a dishonest party would have to redo its puzzle, and the puzzle of every page that followed, and accomplish all of it faster than the whole honest network could add new pages. As the chain grows long, that task becomes all but impossible. The cost of lying climbs far past any hope of profit. Honesty, in the end, is simply the cheaper path to walk. The pages arrive at a slow and steady rhythm, roughly one every 10 minutes, like a soft heartbeat keeping time. There is something almost calming in it, this patient ticking of a clock that no single person winds. No one decreed that rhythm from above. It emerges on its own from countless machines racing in parallel, kept steady by rules that adjust the puzzle's difficulty. So the ledger writes itself, page by page, secured not by a guardian, but by sheer effort, freely given. A book that protects its own truth by making lies cost more than they could ever be worth. But where exactly do these new coins come from, and how many can there ever be? That, too, Satoshi had quietly decided in advance. The coins are not printed by any treasury, nor minted by any state. They come into being only through that steady work of building the chain, handed out as the reward for each new page. But unlike ordinary money, their number is not open-ended. Satoshi wrote a hard limit into the very rules of the system. There would only ever be 21 million coins and not a single one more. This was a deliberate and unusual choice. Most money in the world can be created in greater quantities whenever those in charge decide that it should be. More can always in principle be made. Bitcoin was built to refuse that. Its scarcity was fixed at the very beginning, written into the code that every computer in the network agrees to follow. No central authority could quietly produce more, because there was no central authority at all. The release of new coins was designed to slow over time in a gentle, predictable way. At regular intervals, the reward for building a page is cut neatly in half, an event the community came to call the halving. So the flow began generously and tightens as the years pass. Each halving slows the making of new coins until, more than a century from now, the very last fraction of a coin will be created, and the total will stop forever. There is a quiet elegance to this design. The entire future supply was settled at the outset, laid out in advance like the notes of a song already written, waiting only to be played in their order. In this, Bitcoin echoed an old dream of the pioneers, the wish for digital scarcity, a thing that could not be endlessly copied or conjured from nothing. Nick Szabo had reached for it with bit gold. Here, at last, it had been made to work. This is also why some came to call it digital gold. Like gold pulled slowly and with effort from the earth, these coins could only be won through work, and only so many of them existed to be found. The comparison is imperfect, but it captures something of the feeling. Whether such a fixed supply is wise is a question people still debate, and thoughtful minds fall on different sides of it. Some see discipline in it, others see rigidity. The story tonight need not settle that long argument. What matters for us is the strangeness of the thing itself. A form of money whose total amount was decided once by an unknown hand and then placed beyond the reach of any government, any company, any person at all, including, in the end, its own creator. For Satoshi, too, would be bound by the rules they had written, no more able to make new coins than anyone else who came after. There is something humbling in that. The maker had built a thing that would not bend to its maker. Whatever power Satoshi held at the start, it lay in being first, not in standing above the rules. And in those first quiet months, a few curious people began, one by one, to take notice. Among the very first to take notice was a cryptographer named Hal Finney. He was a respected figure in the privacy community, long admired for his work on software that let ordinary people lock away their messages from prying eyes. When Satoshi's paper appeared, many on the mailing list were doubtful. Hal Finney was among the few who looked closely and saw real promise. He downloaded the software in those earliest days and set it running on his own machine. In doing so, he became one of the first people besides Satoshi to help keep the network alive. For a brief time, the entire system may have rested on just two computers, quietly passing the new currency back and forth between them. And it was to Hal Finney that the very first payment was sent. Satoshi transferred 10 coins to him in what is remembered as the first Bitcoin transaction ever made. A small test between two people of a thing the wider world did not yet know existed. Finney exchanged a great many emails with Satoshi in that period, testing the software, reporting small flaws, offering steady encouragement. Through those messages, we catch some of our clearest glimpses of the elusive author at work. There is a strange and haunting coincidence woven into his story. Hal Finney happened to live in a small California town for a time on the very same streets as a man named Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto. Years later, a magazine would point to that man, Dorian Nakamoto, as the supposed creator of Bitcoin. Largely on the strength of his name alone, he firmly denied it, and no real evidence ever tied him to the project. But the nearness of the two has never stopped fascinating those who study the mystery. As for Hal Finney himself, his later years were marked by great hardship. He was struck by a cruel illness that slowly took away his movement, and he died some years after the currency he had helped nurture began to rise. To the very end, he maintained that he was not Satoshi, only an early believer who had been fortunate enough to be present at the beginning. Most who have studied the matter take him gently at his word. His place in the story is secure regardless. Whoever Satoshi was, Hal Finney was there at the very dawn of it, the second pair of hands, and the first person ever to receive what no one had received before. Around these first few participants, a small community slowly gathered. A forum was created where the curious could meet, ask their questions, and share in the strange new experiment together. In those days, the coins were worth nothing at all. They were a hobbyist's curiosity, passed around almost as a game with no price and no market and no promise of riches to come. But that, too, was about to change. And the moment it began to change would be marked of all unlikely things by 2 pizzas. For more than a year, Bitcoin had no price at all. The coins were created and passed around freely, traded for the fun of it, given away in small handfuls to anyone curious enough to ask. What does it mean for money to be worth nothing? It meant that no one had yet agreed to exchange it for anything real. A coin was a clever idea, an entry in a shared ledger, but you could not yet buy bread with it, or shoes, or a single cup of coffee. Then came a small and now famous moment. In the spring of 2010, a programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz made an offer on the community forum. He would pay 10,000 bitcoins to anyone who would have 2 pizzas delivered to his door. For days, nothing happened. Then someone far away took him up on it. They placed the order, the pizzas arrived at his home, and Laszlo sent over the 10,000 coins just as he had promised. It seems a trivial thing, 2 pizzas changing hands, but it was, as far as anyone knows, the first time Bitcoin had ever been used to buy something real in the ordinary world. For the first time, the coins had a price, measured in something you could actually eat. The community celebrated it almost at once. Each year since, on that same late May day, enthusiasts have marked what they fondly call Bitcoin Pizza Day, raising a slice in memory of the strange little milestone. There is, of course, a sting in the tale. Those 10,000 coins at later heights would come to be worth many millions, and at times far more than that. They are sometimes called the most expensive pizzas ever bought. But it would be unkind and a little unfair to dwell only on that. At the time, the coins truly were worth almost nothing, and someone had to be the first to trade them for something solid. Value had to begin somewhere. And here lies one of the quiet lessons of the whole story. Money is worth what people agree it is worth, and not a penny more. The pizzas mattered because 2 strangers, for a moment, agreed that these coins meant something. From that small seed, a market slowly grew. Places sprang up where coins could be swapped for ordinary currency, and a price began to form, flickering and uncertain at first, then gradually steadier. It is worth dwelling on how mysterious that really is. Nothing about the coins themselves had changed. They were the same entries in the same shared ledger. What changed was belief, the slow and contagious decision of more and more people to treat them as worth something. Through all of this, Satoshi was still present. The author lingered on the forum, refining the software, fixing flaws, and answering the questions of newcomers with unfailing patience. But the one who had built this thing was, even then, beginning to think about letting go. And to understand what came next, it helps to ask who, from all those words left behind, Satoshi seemed to be. We cannot see Satoshi's face, but we are not entirely without a likeness. The author left behind a great many words, in the paper, in emails, in hundreds of posts on that early forum, and in the quiet comments threaded through the code itself. From all of this, a kind of portrait slowly emerges, not of a face, but of a temperament, a way of thinking and of speaking that feels, after a while, oddly familiar. The Satoshi of these writings is careful almost to a fault. The explanations are patient, the reasoning exact, the tone unfailingly modest. When others raised objections, the replies were thoughtful rather than defensive, the manner of someone more interested in getting it right than in being seen to win. There is a collaborative warmth in it, too. Satoshi credited the work of others, welcomed help, and seemed genuinely pleased when newcomers came to understand the idea. A judge who later studied these writings with great care described their author as calm, knowledgeable, and precise, with little or no arrogance. People have pored over every clue, hungry for any hint of identity. The spelling offered some. Satoshi often wrote in the British manner, with words like color and favor, and the odd, very English turn of phrase, even while using American terms elsewhere. The Genesis block had pointed to a London newspaper. The hours of posting were studied as well, in the hope of guessing a time zone, though such clues are easily misread and just as easily disguised. What is clear is the breadth of the mind at work. Satoshi moved with ease across cryptography, economics, and the craft of writing software, weaving them into a single coherent design. This was no idle dabbler, but someone who had thought deeply across several difficult fields at once. And yet, for all that skill, Satoshi was not flawless and never pretended to be. There were bugs to fix, missteps to correct, ideas later thought better of. The portrait is of a gifted human being, not a faultless oracle. We must be careful here in the spirit of this story. Satoshi was neither a prophet nor a fraud, neither a saint nor a schemer. Only, it seems, a careful and able person, working hard at something they believed in. There remains one stubborn uncertainty that no amount of reading can dissolve. We do not even know whether Satoshi was one person or several sharing a single borrowed name. The voice is remarkably consistent, which hints at one author, but hints are all we have. What we can say is that this person took unusual care to leave no trail. No real name ever slipped out, no photograph, no address, no careless detail ever surfaced from behind the pseudonym. It was the work of someone who, even while speaking freely about their invention, had quietly decided to remain unseen. And before very long, that decision would deepen into something far more complete. As Bitcoin grew, it began to draw the kind of attention its creator seemed to find uneasy. What had started among a few dozen specialists was spreading, and with the tension came the first stirrings of real risk. There was a telling moment when a prominent organization, recently cut off from the ordinary banking system, began accepting Bitcoin donations, drawing a sudden glare of publicity. Satoshi reacted not with delight, but with quiet worry. The project, he feared, was still too young and too fragile for so bright a spotlight. It was as though a parent had glimpsed the dangers waiting for a child not yet ready to face them. The invention needed time to grow sturdy before the world's full weight came down upon it. And so, gradually, Satoshi began to prepare for departure. Rather than clutch the project tightly, the author started handing it over to those who had become its most capable caretakers. Chief among them was a developer named Gavin Anderson, who had thrown himself into improving the software. To him, Satoshi passed the keys of stewardship, including control of the code and a special key used to send safety warnings across the whole network. The posts grew fewer. The emails came less often. In one of the last of them, Satoshi remarked simply that he had moved on to other things and that the project was in good hands now. There was no farewell address, no final speech, no parting manifesto, no grand summing up of what had been done. Just a quiet thinning of presence, like a voice growing fainter as someone walks away down a long corridor. In time, even the private emails ceased. The handful of people who had corresponded with Satoshi found their messages going unanswered, swallowed by a silence that simply did not lift. One by one, they stopped writing. For a while, those left behind half expected the author to return. A question would be asked on the forum, and some quietly hoped Satoshi might appear to answer it. But the answers stopped coming, and slowly the truth settled over the community. Satoshi was gone. Not dead as far as anyone knew, and not angry, and not driven away. Simply, deliberately gone, having stepped out of the story while it was still being written. The departure was itself a kind of final design choice. By leaving, Satoshi ensured that no single person, not even the creator, stood at the center of the thing. The project would have to stand on its own now, or not at all. It is a strange feeling to imagine, building something and then walking away from it entirely. To pour years of thought into an invention, watch it begin to live, and then turn quietly and leave without once looking back. Stranger still was what Satoshi left behind, untouched, in walking away. For the author had not only abandoned the project, he had abandoned a fortune. In those first months, when Satoshi was very nearly the only one mining, the coins piled up. Block after block, the rewards came in, and a great store of Bitcoin gathered quietly in the creator's hands. The amount is staggering to consider. Researchers believe Satoshi holds something close to 1 million coins, perhaps little more, one in the earliest and emptiest days of the network. What makes this almost unbelievable is what has happened to those coins since, which is to say, nothing. They have never moved. Not one of them has been spent or sold or shifted in all the long years that followed. Analysts have been able to recognize these earliest coins by a faint and distinctive pattern left in the very way they were mined, a kind of fingerprint in the data. It lets them see the coins, gathered together, almost certainly the work of a single miner, but it never shows them the hand. The value of that untouched hoard has risen beyond easy comprehension. At various heights, it would have ranked Satoshi among the very wealthiest people on Earth, a fortune measured by some reckonings in well over 100 billion. And yet it sits there, perfectly still, a treasure that could in theory be claimed in a single instant, by anyone holding the right secret keys. A fortune guarded by no lock at all, only by silence. Every so often, somewhere in the world, a long-sleeping early wallet stirs and moves a few old coins, and for a moment the whole community holds its breath. Has Satoshi returned? But each time, the coins turn out to belong to some other early miner. Satoshi's own remain unmoved. There is something almost sacred about that stillness, and also something haunting. We do not know why the coins have never moved. Perhaps the keys are guarded with iron discipline. Perhaps they were destroyed or lost. Perhaps the one who held them is no longer alive to reach for them. What we do know is that, whatever the reason, Satoshi never cashed in, never spent the fortune, never flaunted it, never used the enormous wealth the invention had brought into being. The treasure became, instead, a kind of silent monument, a great pile of value visible to all and touched by none, sitting at the heart of the system like a sealed room in a vast and busy house, its door never once opened. That restraint may be the truest signature Satoshi ever left. A person who wished only for wealth would surely have spent it. This one, whoever they were, simply did not. For a story about money, it is a remarkable thing. The person who created the most famous fortune of the digital age appears to have walked away from it without spending so much as a single coin. Which brings us gently to the deepest question of all. Not who Satoshi was, but why. Why build this and then leave it, and then never reach for the gold left shining there in the dark? There is a theory about the disappearance that is, to many, the most satisfying of all. It is the idea that the vanishing was not a flight, nor an accident, but a final and deliberate part of the design. Consider what Bitcoin was meant to be: a money with no ruler, no central office, no single point that anyone could ever seize or control. A system that belonged to everyone precisely because it belonged to no one. Now, consider what a visible, living founder would have meant for such a thing. As long as Satoshi remained, there was a person at the center, someone who could be pressured by governments, courted by companies, blamed in hard times, or simply trusted far too much. A known creator would have been a single weak point in a system built to have none. A door where the design called for a smooth and seamless wall. By staying, Satoshi would have undermined the very thing he had made. And so the vanishing can be read as the last and most elegant feature of the invention. By stepping away, Satoshi removed the one piece that did not belong. There was no leader left to arrest, no founder whose change of heart could bend the project, no central figure for the world to lean upon. The untouched fortune fits the same quiet logic. Had Satoshi begun to spend 1,000,000 coins, it would have shaken the markets and gathered a frightening power into a single pair of hands. By never touching them, the creator declined to become a force within the system he had set free. It is, when you sit with it, a rare and almost startling kind of renunciation. Most who build something great wish to be known for it, to steer it, to be rewarded by it. Satoshi appears to have given up all three at once: the name, the control, and the vast reward. There is a near spiritual shape to that act. The maker who steps back so the creation can stand on its own. The architect who leaves the great building unsigned, content that it stands, indifferent to whether anyone ever knows whose hand first drew it. We should be honest, though, about how much we cannot know. Perhaps the motive was lofty principle. Perhaps it was simple caution, a wish to avoid the legal danger and the unwanted fame that such an invention would surely bring. Perhaps it was some private reason we will never guess at all. The story does not need to settle that. It is enough to notice the shape of what was done and to feel its strange dignity. A gift handed quietly to the world and then released with no hand left holding the string. In a way, the question of why is more beautiful than the question of who. The why points to something almost selfless, resting at the heart of this most unsentimental of inventions. And yet, the world has never been content to leave the who alone. From the moment Satoshi fell silent, the hunt was on. The search for the face behind the name would become an obsession all its own. The hunt has never really stopped. For more than a decade, journalists, researchers, and amateur detectives have searched for the person behind the name, and the searching has become a small obsession all of its own. The candidates are, in a way, the very pioneers we met at the beginning. Suspicion has fallen most often on that small circle of cryptographers who had the rare mix of skills the task would have required. There was Nick Szabo, whose bit gold had so closely foreshadowed Bitcoin. Some who compared his writings to Satoshi's found echoes in the phrasing, the rhythm, the very turns of thought. He has always denied it, and no proof has ever been found. There was Hal Finney, so near to the beginning, so gifted and living by strange chance close to a man who shared the Nakamoto name. He, too, denied it to the very end, and most who study the matter believe him. There was Wei Dai, whose B-Money the paper itself had cited, and Adam Back, whose proof of work lay at the system's heart, and toward whom investigators have pointed yet again, even in recent years. Each has said, plainly and repeatedly, that he is not Satoshi. That is the strange shape of this whole search. Every serious candidate has denied the role, and not one has ever been shown, beyond real doubt, to be lying. The finger points. The accused shakes their head, and the matter quietly rests once more. Some have proposed that the answer is not a single person at all, but a group. A handful of minds, perhaps, working together behind one calm and steady voice, dividing the labor of cryptography, code, and design among them. Others have spun wilder tales, that a government agency built it in secret for reasons never explained, that it was the work of someone long since dead or someone hiding in plain sight. The lack of an answer has left room for every kind of story. Modern tools have been turned upon the mystery as well. Scholars have fed Satoshi's words into machines trained to recognize the fingerprints of style, hoping the patterns of writing might betray their author. The results have been suggestive, but never once decisive. And so the years pass, and the question endures. Each new claim flares up, draws its headlines, and fades again, leaving the central fact untouched. We still do not know. There is something almost fitting in that. A person who took such great care to vanish has so far defeated every attempt to be found. The silence has held, and perhaps that is part of why the search refuses to end. We are creatures who crave a face for every story, a name to set against every deed. A blank space where the author should be feels to many almost unbearable. But amid all the honest seekers, there came one figure of a very different kind. Not someone guessed at against their will, but someone who stepped forward and loudly declared that he himself was Satoshi. For years, an Australian man insisted to anyone who would listen that he was the true Satoshi Nakamoto. He had not been hunted down nor unmasked against his will. He came forward of his own accord and claimed the name as his own. His name was Craig Wright. He told an elaborate story, produced documents, and gathered backers who believed him. To some, for a time, the long mystery seemed at last to have found its answer. But the closer people looked, the less the story held together. The proof he offered did not withstand careful scrutiny. The documents, examined closely, appeared to have been altered or simply invented. The matter eventually reached a courtroom in London. A group formed to defend the open nature of the technology took him to court, asking a judge to rule once and for all on whether his claim could possibly be true. The trial was long and thorough, and in the end, the judge's conclusion could hardly have been clearer. The evidence that this man was not Satoshi, he said, was overwhelming. The court found that he was not the author of the famous paper, nor the creator of the system, nor the person who had used the name in those early years. His claim, the judge ruled, had been built upon falsehood and supported by forgery on a remarkable scale. The ruling brought a kind of relief to many in the community. For years, the false claim had been used to threaten and to sue the very people who quietly kept the project running. The court's words, at last, set that particular ghost to rest. It was a striking contrast to the figure we had glimpsed in the writings. The real Satoshi had seemed calm, modest, and unwilling to chase the spotlight. This claimant was litigious and loud, desperately eager to be believed, and perhaps that contrast is itself a kind of clue. The judge remarked upon it, observing that the genuine Satoshi had seemed collaborative and unassuming, the sort of person most unlikely to drag others into court over the very thing he had given freely to the world. There is a quiet lesson tucked inside this whole episode. The loudest claimant proved to be the false one. The true creator, whoever they are, has never once stepped forward to claim the credit or the name or the fortune. It is the dog that did not bark. In a world full of people who would dearly love to be thought a genius, the one person with the very best claim to the title has remained perfectly, deliberately silent. That, in its way, tells you almost everything. The pretender shouted to be believed. The real one has never said a single word, which raises a simple and surprisingly deep question. If someone truly wished to prove they were Satoshi, beyond all doubt and all argument, how exactly could they do it? The answer turns out to be beautifully simple. And it is the very same reason no claim, however loud, has ever managed to settle the matter. The proof would require no documents, no stories, and no courtroom at all. It would be a single, silent act, and it would be quite impossible to fake. Remember how the system works. Those earliest coins, the great untouched fortune, sit locked behind secret keys. Only the person who holds those keys can move the coins or use them to sign a message. So the proof is this. The true Satoshi could simply take one of those original keys and use it, moving a coin that has not stirred in all these years, or signing a few plain words that only the holder of the key could possibly have signed. No forgery could imitate it, no lawyer could argue it away. The mathematics would speak with perfect clarity, and the whole world would know in a single instant that the real Satoshi had finally reached out from the silenced. It has never happened, not once. Every person who has claimed the name has been asked, in effect, to perform this one simple act, and not a single one of them has ever managed it. This is why the loud claimant in the courtroom could never truly win. He could produce a mountain of paper, but he could not do the one thing that actually mattered. He could not sign with the keys, because all the evidence suggested he had never held them, and so the keys themselves have become the final guardian of the mystery. They are the lock upon the door, the seal upon the letter, the one test that no story can ever pass without them. It is worth marveling for a moment at how clean that is. In most of life, proof is a messy business of witnesses and papers and arguments that can always be doubted. Here, a single signature would settle everything instantly and beyond dispute. It also means the truth, in a sense, is already settled and merely hidden from us. Somewhere, perhaps, those keys still exist. Whoever holds them holds the power to end the whole mystery in one quiet gesture. But they have not. Year after year the keys stay still, and the silence holds, and the proof that could so easily be given is simply withheld. The one who could speak chooses instead to say nothing at all. There is a strange power in that restraint. To possess the means to claim the greatest credit of the digital age, and to decline it again and again without a word of explanation. to let the question hang forever rather than answer it. Most of us, handed so easy a way to claim glory, would take it without a second thought. The withholding here is so complete and so patient that it begins to feel less like secrecy and more like a kind of vow. Whether by deliberate choice or by loss or by death, the keys remain unused, and for as long as they do, no one can honestly say the mystery has truly been solved. So we are left in the end, not with an answer, but with the clean absence of one. And perhaps it is worth asking gently what that absence has actually given us. It is tempting to think that the missing answer is a kind of failure, a loose end, a puzzle the world has simply not yet been clever enough to solve. But there is another way to see it. The remarkable thing about Bitcoin is that it does not need Satoshi. It never did after those first few years. The system runs on without its creator, exactly as it was designed to do. Every computer in the network carries the rules. Every copy of the ledger holds the same long history. The design lives in thousands of machines at once, tended by countless hands, none of them indispensable, none of them in a charge. In this sense, Satoshi achieved something that most creators never do. The creation outgrew the creator entirely. It no longer depends upon the one who made it and would carry on unchanged, whether that person is alive or gone, known or unknown. There is an old wisdom hidden in that. We so often imagine that important things must have an owner, a leader, a single name attached to them. Yet some of the most enduring things work precisely because no one owns them. A language has no author who can change its words by decree. A custom has no master. They live in the shared practice of many, held in common, belonging to all and to none. Bitcoin was built, quite deliberately, to be a thing of that very kind. The number system is another. No one owns the idea of counting, and no ruler can revoke it. Such things endure not despite having no master, but because of it, set beyond the reach of any single will. And so the anonymity of its creator is not a flaw in the story. In a way, it is the story. A maker who understood that, for this particular thing to be truly free, the maker himself would have to disappear. The mystery, then, is not a gap waiting to be filled. It is a feature quietly doing its work. Every year that passes without an answer is another year in which no single person stands above the thing, and that, it seems, was rather the point. There is comfort in this, if you let yourself feel it. We live among so many systems that depend on trust in particular people, people who can fail us, or leave, or change their minds. Here is one small corner of the world built to need none of that. It asks us to trust instead in something more like arithmetic, in rules that apply equally to everyone, that no one can quietly bend, that will still be true tomorrow, whether or not anyone is watching over them. Whatever one finally thinks of the invention itself, and people think a great many things, there is a kind of beauty in that aspiration, a wish to make something fair by making it belonged to no one at all, and the unknown maker, having built it, simply let it go. Which brings us at last back toward the quiet of the night and to the strange peace this story can leave behind. So now the journey can grow quiet. We began with a name on a short paper, posted to a handful of strangers in a difficult autumn. We followed the long road behind it, through the dreamers who came before, the elegant machine that answered their dream, and the slow, deliberate vanishing of the one who built it. We met a problem that seemed impossible. Money that could not be copied, kept honest by no one in particular. We watched it solved, not by a single stroke of genius, but by gathering old ideas and binding them at last into something alive. And we followed the maker to the edge of the story, and then beyond it, into a silence that has never broken. A fortune left untouched, a name left unclaimed, a face that has never once turned toward us out of the dark. Tonight, somewhere, the ledger is still being written. A new page is being sealed onto the chain, as another has been roughly every 10 minutes for all these years. The quiet heartbeat goes on, tended by strangers, owned by no one. And somewhere, perhaps, a set of keys lies perfectly still, capable in a single moment of ending the greatest mystery of the digital age and choosing, as it always has, to remain silent. There is no need to solve any of it tonight. The question of who Satoshi was can rest exactly as it has rested for so long. Some mysteries are not problems to be fixed, but quiet companions, content to be left unanswered. What lingers instead is the shape of the thing. A person who made something, gave it to the world, asked for nothing in return, and disappeared. Neither hero nor villain, only a careful builder who let go completely. There is a gentleness in that, if you look for it. The reminder that one can create without clinging, give without being repaid, and matter enormously without ever being seen. It is a rare thing in any age, and rarer still in ours, when so much is done in the hope of being noticed. To act, and then to step out of the light, and to let the work itself be the only monument. Outside the window, the world goes on with its ordinary trust. People hand over coins and cards and believe, mostly rightly, that the numbers will add up. And beneath it all runs this stranger idea that perhaps trust might be built from mathematics alone. You do not need to decide tonight whether that idea is wise or lasting or true. You need only let it settle, like everything else, into the soft dark at the end of the day. Whatever becomes of it in the years ahead, the story has already given us its quiet gift. A reminder that some of the most lasting things are made by hands we never see. Let the ledger keep its patient time. Let the keys stay still. Let the unknown maker remain unknown, somewhere far away, or long gone, or quietly among us. The world slows, and so do we. Good night.